Do you like spinning? Do you like
winning?
Well, you see, in other games, you can spin and you can even win. But in Last Epoch, you can spin a lot. I mean, multiple times at the same time. And when you spin a lot, that means you win a lot. So if you're the opposite of a loser, no, a multiple loser, then this is the only build that can match your
Winning
lifestyle. So strap in and get ready for some serious G-forces because I'm about to show you nothing less than 360 degrees of utter domination. All right, hello and welcome. This is the Echo Warpath Void Knight Guide, aka Spin to Win. This is the quintessential spin to win in Last Epoch. It spins pretty much forever. And it adds on its own little flavor with the echoes that can spin behind you and kill stuff behind you, but also multiple can attack the same enemy if you orbit it. It's a very cool build. It is probably my number 2 all-time build, and I could make an argument for it being my favorite all-time build. I just love this build. I do enjoy spin to win generally, but this one is my favorite spin to win of any ARPG ever. It is also very, very friendly to players who don't want to press a lot of buttons. Is friendly to anyone who has any sort of disabilities. As a 4-button build technically, but 2 buttons you only use at the beginning of the Echo, and you can just not use those, and it's still like 80-90% of the power. I'd say 90%. And then it's a 2-button build, and if you turn into a 1-button build, it's still like 80% of the power. So you could actually play this literally 1 button, and you will be absolutely fine and be able to do all the content, and be quite strong. Now, I do want to talk about a couple of misconceptions I have seen out there recently on this build before we get into it. The first one is that it is low damage. It is very much not low damage. It is very good damage. That misconception, I think, comes from 2 places. First off, it's from people see low numbers early, but that's because it hasn't ramped up yet. It ramps up dramatically once it starts hitting an enemy and putting time around on them, going from the hundreds of damage to the thousands of damage very, very quickly, and then doing it 3 times at a very quick succession once you get enough echoes up. Also, on top of that, I think some people struggle to gear it properly. An example, they don't have Apathy's Maw with melee crit. So we're going to handle that by offering a variant that we didn't offer before that allows people to go crit earlier if they don't have the Apathy's Maw with melee crit strike chance, so that people can make that decision on their own. The other misconception is that we are doing the full-on spin to win forever and small amount of buttons playstyle for some reason about being lazy and not efficiency. That is 100% incorrect. This is actually the most optimal way to play it because there are so many benefits to being in the state of spinning, to channeling Warpath, that you lose if you leave it, including taking massive amounts of damage and also losing the ability to generate echoes for 2 seconds, that leaving it is silly. You don't want to do that, and anyone who tells you otherwise, you can tell them I said they're wrong. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the pros and cons of the build. First off, and maybe my favorite, it is immune to stuns. I do not like stuns in this game. I don't think they're very well done. I think they're annoying. I can't be stunned when I am spinning. I like it. It also has high move speed, especially once you get going, and once you get Dark Stride and lots of melee void damage, you can get this well over 100% move speed pretty much forever. It has great AoE and single target DPS. It does not struggle with either of those. It is not the very top end, but is very good on both, making it a very well-rounded build. And like I stated earlier, it is new player disability and also solo self-found friendly because it does not require a lot of gear, and the gear that it does want is very target farmable. As far as cons, it is not very tanky. It uses most of its defense, quote-unquote, in mobility. It's tanky enough to take a few hits and gets a lot of leech, but this is not a build you want to stand there and just take punishment on. It is not a very involved playstyle, so if you're looking for something where you do press a lot of buttons or you have a relatively complex rotation, you probably want to look at something else. Unlocking the crit does require legendary if you want to go the full playstyle that allows you to have a lot of move speed and some good defenses. You need to get the Apathy's Maw, with melee crit, but there is an alternative if you want it. And max efficiency requires managing Sigils of Hope. Sigils of Hope is an annoying skill that most players just don't like. However, in this build, it is very quick. Basically, you enter an echo, you use your sigils, and then you go. So not a big deal, but it is required if you want to get max efficiency. Okay, there's the pros and cons. Let's talk about the skills. The obvious star of the show, unquestionably, is Warpath. Warpath is a skill that is going to just cause you to spin and move at the same time. We are going to cause it to do a 100% spin all the time by taking 2 points in Unchained and 1 point in Reckless Spin. This causes it to have no mana cost while channeling, therefore you can stay in it forever. You do lose minus 3% elemental resistance. We're going to make up for that, though, with a really nice suffix that gives us all res while channeling, so this won't be a problem. We're going to get a lot more move speed out of Quicksilver Wind. This is 30% move speed right here, so we're definitely going to want this. But the real star of the show in this setup is actually going to be over on the right side. So we take Void Spiral to get into Echo Knight. Echo Knight allows this to do the echoes. That's the extra guys that are spinning that you can see on that video. Then we're going to take Apocalypse Whirl, which is going to convert our damage to Void and give us Time Rot chance. And then we're going to take Maw of the Deep, which gives us 15% hit damage per Time Rot. Time Rot stacks 12 times. Do the math there. It's a lot of damage. It's one of the bigger multipliers in the game. So this is very important. Then we will go over to the left and take Whirling Steel, where we will get 80% more damage because it's doubled with a two-handed weapon. So those are the two multipliers that get this thing going. On top of that, we will take some area from Iron Reach and from Battlemaster's Blade, and that will pretty much round that out. Okay, let's talk about the other things. I'm actually going to start with Anomaly, because this is the skill that you will take first after Warpath. Anomaly is a big damage boost to single target tanky enemies. To get this to work properly, we need it to be instant cast because we don't want to leave our channel, because then we take more damage and do less damage. And we want it to trigger immediately. Normally it would send enemies forward in time, but if it does that, then we're not hitting them. So we don't want that to do that, because then they just disappear for a while. After that, we want to take Mark of Rot. This causes any enemy that has been hit by Anomaly to take 100% increased damage. If this is your only source of increased damage, which it will be, or enemy taking increased damage, not you increased damage. So the enemy takes increased. That is effectively double damage. So this is exceptionally powerful. After that, we'll take Time Bubble, which will give us some attack speed and some cooldown recovery speed. And then we'll take some duration on this so that we have it for a little bit longer. And that will round out our Anomaly. Next up, we're going to take Shield Rush. Shield Rush is going to be our mobility skill when we need it, which will not be in the late endgame. But before that, you're going to need this to get out of certain attacks. For example, the big dragon in now I'm forgetting the name of it, Reign of Dragons, and the Reign of Dragons timeline has a really big AoE that if you don't have enough movement speed yet, you will not be able to get out of it unless you time it perfectly. Instead, just use Shield Rush to get out of it. But that's the only thing you're going to use this for. You're going to take nodes to make it a ability that you can use when you don't have a shield on, and then give it mana efficiency and some damage reduction. Take them while rushing. The rest of these are pretty much irrelevant, but you've got to take points somewhere, so that's where they're going. The next up is Sigils of Hope. Like I said, this is the skill that you use to maximize your damage at the end. You won't take this until quite a ways. I think you're like level 80 before you actually get this. But that is the most efficient path. Trust me on that. It's okay that you don't have the skill for a long time. But when you do get it, it's going to give you a lot more added damage and a lot more increased damage. It's also going to give you some endurance threshold, which is nice to have. This is going to be just a nice little boost to your overall damage and a little bit towards your defense. To use this, because it costs a lot of mana, you are going to need to take Volatile Reversal, and we'll talk about the rotation in a minute, but this is going to restore your mana. We do take some other points in here, because why not? The biggest ones are going to be things that reduce the cooldown on it and give you additional reversal time so you get more mana back, but also the movement speed and attack speed are nice at the beginning of an echo to get you kind of going. Okay, that is the skills. Let's talk about the passives. So we have Armorclad here, which is damage reduction. Damage taken is reduced by nearby enemies, where they're pretty much always nearby, so that's really good. We've also got a bunch of resistances here. This is one thing that is really good in the Sentinel tree. There's lots of resistances to be gained, also a lot of health, so these are nice nodes to take for that. Echoing Strikes, Time Legion, and Avatar of Regret are insanely important for this build because they significantly increase the likelihood that you are going to echo. You will echo, you have a chance to echo every second when you're spinning, and this gets you up to, I think, 80% or so chance per second, so that's very strong. Without it, it's like something like 30%, which not so strong. World Eater is your entirety, all you need for Leech. You'll also get some Leech off of Siphon of Anguish, but you could actually just use this and you would be fine. Siphon has additional benefits, which is why we take it, but World Eater is a very strong node. Singular Purpose gives you 100% increased void damage, and the cost is reduced block chance, and you have 0% block chance, so the cost is no cost to you. Eternal Form gives you vitality and increased health, very strong node. And then Void Corruption gives you crit multi per point spent in Void Knight, and we are spending 63 points in Void Knight, so that's 63% crit multi. That is very nice. That is the passives. Let's talk about the rotation, which is a very, very easy rotation. So the way to play this that is optimal is to use your Sigils of Hope at the beginning, hit it 4 times, and then hit Volatile Reversal, which will give you your full mana back, and then start spinning. Use that to just go through the echo, or whatever you're doing. Go towards the boss, whatever it might be you're going after. You spin towards that thing, and you keep going. And that's what you do until you reach something that's strong. And once you reach something that's strong, like a rare or a boss, you will then immediately use Anomaly on top of it, and then you will orbit that. You will orbit whatever that enemy is. You will go around it, and you'll go around it, and you'll go around it, which will cause all of your echoes to start hitting as well. Make sure you orbit it far enough out, because you do need to do, I think, 4 meters every 2 seconds or something like that, or else you won't get an echo. But if you're orbiting around the outside of an enemy, you won't have any problem with that. And if you do that, they will die relatively quickly, especially if they're like a rare or something. They'll die very quickly. That is all you need to do on this build. There is nothing else to do outside of, if you're in something that you can't get out of quickly, you might want to Shield Rush. That's it. This is a very easy build to play. If you get that down and you do that, you're going to have a great time with it. All right, gameplay done, just like that. Let's talk about the gear progression. There are 3 things we'll talk about here. We'll start with the standard setup. The standard setup is going to use a number of uniques that are not especially hard to get, but will take some farming. The first one is Apathy's Maw, which gives you a ton of melee void. It also gives you Doom on hit. It gives you nice increased melee damage, increased leech rate as well. And it's got a large amount of just added damage on it. This is a very strong item, but it's not especially strong until you get melee critical strike chance on it. However, it is still usable, and I think for most players it's the better choice. Yes, you'll do less damage when you aren't critting. You'll do quite a bit less damage, but you'll still do quite a bit of damage, and you'll be faster. I think for most players that is probably the better choice to go. So you'll be trying to get yourself a melee crit version. In the meantime, you can use a non-melee crit version, and you still should be fine. You also want Dark Strides. Dark Strides are going to give you 0.2% increased movement speed per added melee void damage, and you are stacking added melee void damage a lot, so these are a really nice addition. They also give you increased void damage, and then if you can get yourself a version with move speed on top, you're going to just be very, very fast. We use Siphon of Anguish. This is one of the easiest uniques to get in the game, and also legendaries for that matter, because it's very easy for it to roll with legendary potential. It gives you Leech, and both melee and void apply to this. Leech rate, movement speed, elemental resistance, and more chance to apply Doom. We don't care about Void Pen with Doom. That's a useless stat, but the rest of these are really good. And then, of course, you can get legendary potential on this, and it's pretty easy to get 2. And it's very possible to get 3. I've gotten 3 before. 3 LP. Siphon of Anguish is a really awesome item. The next unique we'll talk about is Shattered Chains. You also get, by the way, you get this, and this off Shade of Orbis. So your farming is like pretty straightforward what you're going to do. Shattered Chains is going to give you armor, melee void damage, increased melee damage, and 5% more melee damage per stack of Doom. You get 4 stacks of Doom. That's 20% more melee damage. This is a significant damage buff to your setup. The last thing we've got is Wings of Argentus. This is not required is the highest EHP because of the haste it also offers. You want haste and you want EHP. 20% less damage taken while moving is a lot of damage reduction. If you wanted to not wear this, you would need to find haste somewhere else. Haste is 30% move speed, and that for 1 second is up almost all of the time because your echoes can proc it. So you can choose to wear this, get your less damage taken while moving, and also your haste. Or you can choose to wear another item like, I'm forgetting the name of it. There is a body armor that gives you damage reduction when you're wearing a two-hander. It's not going to come to you, but there is one. There's another one that a lot of people like to wear. If you want the haste, you have to wear a Quicksilver Coil as your ring. That's a significant loss in stats, and when we put it in spreadsheets, it doesn't come out very well for the non-wing setup. So I recommend wings, but you don't need to have it, and by wearing this, you do lose access to some really, really good stats, so kind of up to you, but I recommend wings for everybody. Okay, so let's say you were one of those players who's like, I'm not doing enough damage. I'm like, here, I don't have this, and my damage isn't high enough. What can I do? You can do this setup. This setup is going to sacrifice both movement speed and defense, but you will do a lot more damage because you're going to be able to pick up a sword and then switch out some of your skills points in Warpath to get added crit damage, or added crit chance, excuse me. So you'll be able to instead take Cyclone of War instead of some of these AoE things. You take Cyclone of War. This gives you your base crit chance. You can now scale your base crit chance, and you will do more damage that way. And the melee crit strike multiplier on this is also really huge. So this is an option. In this setup, we have to build things quite a bit different. You need the +3 to Warpath to be able to access all the points you need, so you can't really wear Wings of Argentis unless you get insanely lucky and get a 1LP one and also slam on +3 to Warpath. Good luck. Getting a Wings of Argentis with 1LP is something like 1 in 100, so it's pretty insanely rare. So you have to go with something like this. The rest of the setup is pretty similar, except now you need Quicksilver Coil. So this is quite a bit less defense, and it is slower because you are not scaling as much melee void damage with Dark Stride, but it will be more damage. So if you feel like your damage is underwhelming, swap to this, and it'll be better. The last thing is the low life setup. This setup is the highest EHP, but it definitely sacrifices move speed to get there. So you will be slower on this setup by a good bit, but if you're trying to push corruption as high as you can, this is the setup that you want. It uses Last Steps of the Living, it uses Exsanguinous, and it uses a experimental fix that gives you, all three of those give you health loss per second, and then health or missing health gained as ward per second. And this will stack significantly higher than the amount of health you have. And you will stack this, you will get this to get to that point where it gives you significantly more ward than health by stacking ward retention. Now, ward retention is usually stacked with intelligence, which is a completely useless stat to us. However, strength is not a completely useless stat to us. In fact, it's a very useful stat that increases our damage, increases our armor, and if we wear a Cleaver Solution, increases our intelligence, which then increases our ward retention. So by going with Cleaver Solution, we can now stack a lot of ward, potentially something like 20,000 ward standing, just standing there. That's a lot more than like the 3,000 or so that you're going to access without this setup. Quite a bit more, you could say. So to do this, you have to do a dual wield setup because you've got to wear one-hander. So we use a sword. And then we also like Twisted Heart of Kairos in this for the increased health. You have to get all res while channeling on this, though. If you want to get your resistances taken care of, which I should mention now is a very important stat on all three of these. All res while channeling is a massive stat for getting your resistances, especially with that -30 elemental resistance you're going to have on that Warpath. So you definitely want this. This is a priority for your build as well. But if you can get that on a Twisted Heart, you are in serious business, and you're gonna go places. Yeah, you're gonna absolutely go places. So that's your 3 setups. Use whichever one you like the most. If you're pushing high corruption, I highly recommend low life. I recommend for most players before high corruption that they go with the regular endgame setup. But this is also an option if you want to do more damage and you are impatient about getting your melee crit on your Apathisma. All right, that is all of the stats. But let's talk about the blessings and the idols, and then we are more or less done. We have a little bit of build scaling to talk about. We want Shred Void Resistance, Grand Depths of Infinity on this build. We also, that's from Rhea. We want increased stun chance from Lagon. We want critical strike avoidance from the Dragon. This is going to pair with a tier 5 critical strike avoidance on your ring to crit avoidance cap you. And then we want Grand Bulwark of the Tundra for the increased armor. And then one of my favorite blessings, Grand Patience of Hercure. Armor while channeling, it's a massive amount. 600 up to 650 armor while channeling is a lot of armor from one place. So this is a really, really strong blessing. And really kind of supercharges our armor, especially in that low life setup where you get an insane amount of increased armor. Very, very good blessing. As far as idols go, we have some flexibility on this setup. There's not a whole lot of, like, obviously the best. The Warlord Grand Solar Idol of Despair, giving you Warpath area and increased melee void damage, is a very strong option for offense. So we've got one of those in here. We also have one with Shred Armor and Warpath area, and one with Warpath area and increased armor. All three of these are good options. Feel free to mix and match as you want. The rest of your slots can be increased health and resistances as you need them, or armor and resistance as you need them. You can obviously mix and match here, or whatever it is that you need. Get your resistance capped, get increased health. You can't really go too wrong with your idols. These are not super priority in any particular given one, like some of the other setups, some of their builds have. All right, let's just talk about build scaling for a minute, and then we'll be done. Melee void damage, as we mentioned, very, very powerful, especially with Dark Stride, makes it also scale move speed along with your damage. Critical strike chance is a huge part of the build if you've got Apathisma or you go with a crit setup. Until then, it's not very valuable at all. Crit multiplier, we do like it where we can get it, but Void Corruption, the passive point, gives us a bunch itself, so we're already pretty good to go. We don't have much room for melee attack speed, unfortunately, in the build, but Blade Master gives us 30% attack speed in the passive tree, a very powerful node in the tree. And also Time Legion gives us some melee attack speed as well. That's really where we're going to get most of our melee attack speed from. Strength is a very good stat. Gives us both increased damage and armor. And if you go low life, it's even more powerful. We talked about Sigils of Hope, what it gives you. It does give you some Ignite chance, by the way, which is converted to Time Rot with Warpath, so it gives you even more Time Rot. But you really only need enough Time Rot to make sure you get to 12 stacks, which you'll get to pretty quickly. Increased damage, anything with void damage you like. Shred Armor, we're going to get a bunch of that in this build, so make sure you have it somewhere. And when you do, it's very, very powerful. And then Anomaly levels can give you increased void damage also. So that's a nice little to have if you find it, but not necessarily needed. As far as defense goes, we talked about Armor Clad, giving the damage reduction in the passive tree. Endurance is a nice stat. We get a lot more value out of this because of Sigils of Hope. Armor mitigation, we get a lot of armor in this build. That's our primary mitigation for hit on this build. We do stack health as much as we can. We can go over 4,000 health depending on how we build it. As far as leech goes, we get a ton from World Eater and also just from the ring. We also do get frailty out of this setup. We really don't get chill much out of this setup. If you can find an Okirion with a bunch of legendary stats as a best in slot, then you can get chill that way. But otherwise, well, with increased critical strike, this is a hard item to get and a hard item to fit in. But if you can fit in with the rest of your gear, this is a way to get chill. Otherwise, unfortunately, this build can't fit it in. Okay, that is all of the stuff in here except for the loot filter. This is where you can download our loot filter. As of this recording, we don't have the 1.0 loot filters yet for the for MG and the CUF factions. We will have those by 1.0. So you'll be able to pick the loot filter for the factions you want. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this build, and I hope you have a great time in Last Epoch. Enjoy the launch, and I'll see you all again real soon.